Right. Hello, Professor. My name is Caitlin Swenson, and this is my functional movement screen project for the end of the winter 2025 semester. For my participant, I actually chose myself. I am 22 years old. My sleeping patterns consist of 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. I mainly sleep on my stomach and sometimes on my left side. I drive about 2 to 3 hours a day. It can change. Sometimes it actually will be less. It will never be more than that, though, however. Minimum probably about an hour. My physical activity looks like about 45 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week, as well as all three of my jobs that I maintain are very active jobs, very hands-on and on my feet all the time. So I'm constantly getting over 10,000 steps at all three of my jobs. My past physical activity, which I thought was very important to know through this testing, is that I was a pole vaulter for 10 years from middle school, high school to college as well. I loved it and I just stopped about a year and a half ago now. So you'll see that in some of my movements where I kind of have some shoulder restrictions. For my clinical history, I did have a second grade lateral ankle sprain when I was a freshman in college at San Diego State. I was diagnosed about 3.5 years ago via a physical exam performed by the athletic trainer we had at the time at San Diego and as well as an MRI. I wore a boot for about 4 weeks to immobilize the ankle. I was also as well on crutches for about 2 weeks with no weight prior, and then I completed about 8 weeks of physical therapy afterwards with the athletic trainer. I still do have issues with the full range of movement from that right ankle, though. Right. To start the functional movement screen, the first exercise was the deep squat. I started off with no assistance under my feet. You'll see I have a posterior pelvic tilt. I'm not being able to go down all the way to a deep squat. This is the frontal view of the one without the board. My shoulders also, you'll see when I am not using the board as persistence, will come forward a little bit, which we don't want. We want to stay in line. So now my feet are up. I am more in line. The dowel is pretty much straight. My shoulders actually do a lot better when my feet are up because of that dorsiflexion restriction. You'll see this is the lateral side. I still do have a posterior pelvic tilt as well, which we will need to address through the exercises after the testing. I gave myself about a 2 on this one because I was able to do it with the board. I still definitely have some um, modifications and some different issues that I'm doing throughout the movement, however. For the second movement, we have the hurdle step. This one was very difficult for me. You can see that I'm not necessarily staying in line. I'm really also leaning into the hip on each side that I was on. My balance was not great through this either. You'll see through my abdominals that they're not fully engaged, and I am also pushing my spine to the band to try to feel like I need to get over instead of using that from my hips. I'm not necessarily swinging my hips over, but you'll see it through my spine and my hips that the compensation's coming from. Definitely leaning into that right hip right there. The dowel, however, is straight. I give myself a 2 on this one. Um, I'm not necessarily all over, but still making compensations that I shouldn't be. You'll see right here. That's when I start to push my stomach forward and not maintain that straight back spine that we're looking for. All right. For the next one, we have the inline lunge. You'll see right here, dowel stays at my back the entire time. My knee comes down and hits right behind my heel. It looks pretty good from the sagittal plane. From the frontal plane, you'll notice I have some issues with stability, really coming from my abdominal, my rectus transverse, and my obliques as well. I really struggle to engage it in movements like this. You'll also see some wobbling from the dorsiflexion restriction I have in my ankle. Um, so my left leg in front is a little bit better than my right leg. Still definitely have some issues though with engaging my glutes as well through this. Um, not the greatest. I did give myself, I believe, a 2 and a 1 on the other side. Next, we have the shoulder mobility. I passed. I gave myself a 3. Looks like about less than a fist and a half length in between on both sides as well. I had to have somebody come and measure, so she kind of got in the way of the camera, but you can kind of get the gist of it. So sorry. Okay. And for our active scapular stability, I passed this with flying colors. I had no pain through it. See from all the different angles of all the different shoulder pieces. There. So that is a pass. All right. Next, we have the active straight leg raise. Here, you'll notice that I really struggle with my posterior chain flexibility. I start to straighten it as I go, but it doesn't originally start straight, and it is very difficult. You'll see my leg that is supposed to stay on the ground as soon as I try to straighten it kind of come up a little bit, which we don't want. I did give myself a 2 on this one. I wasn't able to keep that hamstring straight the whole time because of the tightness that I have in that posterior chain from my hamstring and my glutes. You'll see though that my leg on this side does remain on the ground the whole time, which is what we are looking for. It starts to come up a little bit though right there. When I try to pull, you'll see my other leg move on the ground as well, which is not great for the test. Next, we have the trunk stability push-up. We'll see, I'm able to complete the movement, keep my body in a line the entire time as well, which is great. See it again right there. Feet stay in line. And here's from the front. From the front, you'll notice some compensations. I do have one stronger shoulder than the other. That does come from pole vault. They're inconsistent in their strength. My right shoulder is a little bit stronger than my left, so I tend to kind of use my right to stabilize and compensate a lot more on that side. My left shoulder also has been really tight for a while. It doesn't cause pain, but it's very tight due to my issues with pole vault and just constantly being in the positions that pole vault requires you to be in. So the next is the spinal extension clearing. Here you'll see that I pass no pain at all in there. Next, we have the functional movement screen, the rotary stability. You'll see that I already had to regress it. I tried the ipsilateral. It was very difficult for me. I couldn't complete it. You'll see through this, I do have a posterior pelvic tilt like I had in the deep squat as well. Very difficult for me. I also really lack abdominal engagement, any core bracing at all. The rotary stability is very difficult for me to engage in. So that's something we definitely need to have to address in the exercises that are prescribed after this. And then next we have the spinal flexion clearing. See this from the frontal plane and from the sagittal plane, going back into almost a child's pose. I had no pain in this, so I pass. Right, now we actually have the functional movement screen evaluation chart. So for the deep squat, I gave myself a 2, like I had said. Noted everything. I have a little bit of a hip shift, a posterior pelvic tilt, definitely some dorsiflexion restriction that did improve with the board. For the hurdle step, I gave myself a 2, really just leaning into whatever hip and trying to compensate as well as not keeping a stable spine and stable core, bracing my core to be able to also maintain that stable spine. Shoulder mobility, I passed. And then shoulder impingement pass, straight leg active raise. This should have been a 2 on both of them. I apologize for the incorrect notes on here for the uh, because of my hamstrings. They're very tight. I wasn't able to keep the leg straight the entire time. I was able to do the movement, but it needed to be better. So for that, I will deduct 2 points. For the shoulder mobility, I will add those 2 points though, because I see on here that they're 2. I must have gotten a little confused. For the trunk stability push-up, I give myself a 2. I did notice inconsistencies with my shoulder strength, so I definitely wanted to note that. I'd rather be safe than sorry in doing one of these evaluations. For the spine extension, I also passed, no pain at all. For the rotary stability, I gave myself a 2 because I already regressed it down. I still had some compensation I was making. I had a posterior pelvic tilt, and again, my rotary um, ability is not great due to a lack of abdominal muscles and engagement through those. So we really want to focus on that when we go into our exercises. And then we did pass with the lumbar spine flexion. So my score is about a 15, possibly could have been a 14 with different numbers. Uh, yeah. So with limitations, like we talked about, my posterior pelvic tilt, you'll see that hypolordosis again, um, a limited ankle dorsiflexion as well. You see that on almost every movement, unfortunately, with me due to my ankle sprain as well. You also see an underactive core, which contributes to the rotary movements that I really, really struggle with. And then you'll see an asymmetry and weakness in my hips due to the underactive glutes. I do tend to activate one glute and then I will not activate the other glute. This is something that I've struggled with for a very long time. So making sure I'm doing exercises that are really activating both and constantly thinking about the mind muscle connection will help with this for me. Again, main target issues are dorsiflexion range of movement, stabilization within the hips and the core, and then an increase in rotary stability as well. We're going to train these through training gluteal muscles, improving hip mobility, and hamstring mobility too. I did not put that on here, but that is very big. Ankle mobility, gaining a rotary and core stability as well, and then training ipsilateral quadratus lumbar. For our exercise program here, warm up day one, we have inline position 33 by 30-second holds. This is already regressed from the bully. I really struggled to just even hold it, so I left it as just a hold. Then we have the mini squat for 2 by 10, hamstring knee pull for 2 by 30-second holds on each side. Core bracing, plowing the field. 2 by 10, shoulder taps, rotary stability is 2 by 15. Squats with a band pulling medially to activate glutes on both sides, being very mindful when we do these. We're doing 3 by 10. And then glute bridge holds, we're doing 4 by 30-second holds. For day two, we have the worm walk. We're doing 2 by 30 seconds. So really 2 sets of these, which they're extremely difficult. You make those look very easy, Professor. And then for the hamstring knee pulls, again on day two, really important. We're stretching the hamstrings. I'm just very tight through my exam. So I want to make sure I'm really incorporating a posterior chain stretch. For day two exercises, we have the chop and lift for 3 by 10, internal and external rotations in a squat for 3 by 10, banded walks, 2 by 10 meters, and then bird dogs 3 by 8. We did have to modify the 10 meters on our banded walks because I do not have that much room in my apartment to do them. So we made work, we made do. The first one was the inline position hold. You'll see right here. This video is a little bit longer. We have both sides of 30 seconds. You can see that I'm really trying to stay in line on both of them. It is very difficult though for me to maintain my balance here. So it was really good that we kept this as a regression because I wanted to make sure that I was being accurate in my exercises and not trying to push myself more than what I should have been. So you'll see here, really trying to engage my core, keep everything in line, even engage my glutes here. Just making sure that I'm doing what I can in this exercise. That's that side. We're going to switch over to the other side. And you're going to see a lack of balance, which I'm really trying to engage my core to help stabilize me. Really sorry for the background noises again as well. I wanted to leave it in so you heard every balance issue I had. Okay, moving on. We did the mini squat. These were also very difficult for me. I really struggle with that lack of motion in both of my ankles. Really trying to allow that to stretch the posterior chain as well. Getting my soleus and my gastrocnemius in there and making sure that I'm being mindful in the connections I'm making through those stretches. All right, the next thing we have is our hamstring knee pull. You can see that I was very tight this day. I was coming home from working out actually. So this was a great thing to end on. It's made me realize the importance of continuing this to stretching every day because when you're tight, you can't necessarily do movements to the full ability. So getting mobility and flexibility back in my body has been a really big thing since completing the FMS and these exercises. You'll see that my knee is definitely bent here, unable to keep it straight, but I am really focusing on keeping the leg on the ground that's immobile straight, pushing my heel through the ground and making sure that I'm getting a deep stretch within that hamstring muscles. Okay. Day one, the first exercise we did was core bracing and slash plowing the field. I was really making sure that I was maintaining connection on my hips when I was coming down and that I was taking this movement really slow to engage my core, embrace my core, as well as engaging my quads and making sure they were coming up at the same time with my glutes being engaged as well. Like I said earlier, I really struggled to have both glutes activate at the same time and keep them balanced through the movement. So that was my mindset when I was doing this exercise, was to really have everything balanced and rise together. So you'll see that here. Really great for the mind muscle connection as well. Constantly trying to engage those cores as I do struggle with that as well. Really bracing. Again, we did 3 by 10 in here. For the next exercise I did, it was shoulder taps for rotary stability, which I love shoulder taps. I do these all the time. Never thought to put a dowel on my back though. It was definitely um, motivating though, because I got to feel what it felt like for my hips to not move, for my pelvic to not move. So it was really helpful in trying to continue to balance that and seeing which way the dowel fell to see which way I'm compensating on. I love these though. I will continue to implement these. I think that was great. Really trying to engage my core again. Okay, so I did squats with a medial band pull. I'll do this one first. It was to be able to engage both my glutes and making sure I was pushing my knees outwards, engaging my adductors and abductors as I'm doing these movements. I still do have a slight posterior pelvic tilt. Really want to make sure I'm engaging my core and keeping my chest up when I'm doing these. But yeah, really wanted to continuously to think about rising together, which if you look, my hips stayed pretty much in line the entire time I was doing this, which is very abnormal for me. So I think this was a great exercise to fix my hip shift when I'm doing in a squat. Really trying to get that to be pulled and add that resistance. Then you'll see on this one, unfortunately, I was not able to get the frontal view of this angle or of this leg due to the lack of space in my apartment. But same thing for the other side. A little less of a pelvic tilt on some of these as well. You also see that I'm not able to go super deep due to my dorsiflexion restrictions as well. Next to end for day one was the glute bridge holds, which was really great for me to just constantly keep engaging my glutes and really being mindful of the height of each hip to make it balanced and make sure that they were staying together in this movement. Really trying to fire up my quads as well in doing this, and as well as keeping my abs and stable, making sure that it's being stable for my back and bracing it in that way. Yeah, so those were really great to really activate and start with a regression form of engaging the glutes. All right. For the next ex or for day two, we started with worm walks. These were great. Let me tell you, these are very difficult. I think these were absolutely great though, because I really do struggle with being tight in all of my posterior chain. I mean, I have dorsiflexion restrictions, which comes from my ankle sprain. Also, though, my soleus and gastrocnemius being tight, my hamstring being tight, and everything, like it says, is a chain. So it all connects. So this was really great to be able to stretch the entirety of my posterior chain. I very much think these were really helpful before getting into any exercises. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. All right, we do now have our hamstring knee pull. Again, um, as you saw on day one, it actually looks like my right side is a little bit better than day one. So that we will take as a progression. We will be happy with that. Um, yeah, definitely going to be implementing these in everyday life for me. I think these are great in getting our hamstrings loose. I did it on both sides again for 30-second holds, making sure that we were being equal on each side. Really also trying to push that heel into the ground of the opposite leg to get that extra step or extra stretch. Righty. For the first exercise on day two, I did the chop and lift. Um, you're going to see again, unfortunately, I don't have the room to do the other angle for this. Really keeping a nice a stable foundation when doing these, being able to engage my core and my glutes, really great mind-body connection for me. And I also really enjoyed these because they were able to get my shoulders back involved. And through pole vault, you're constantly using your shoulders and they get very tight. Not a primary concern, but these were very helpful for that as well. Right. Standing in internal and external rotations. So these were really great to have isolated movements on each side and being able to engage both glutes at the same time while doing these, while also engaging all of the surrounding muscles as well. The adductors, abductors, really being mindful though in keeping my hips balanced and not overcompensating on either side. So I very much think these were great for stabilization and making sure my hips weren't shifting to one side. Both sides. All right. And then we go into banded walks. These were supposed to be 2 by 10 meters. Unfortunately, I don't have 10 meters to walk. So I just ended up going back and forth, making sure I was getting enough touches. Really great for engaging the glutes and keeping your core stable. So you're a stable foundation as well. Um, Making sure also you're keeping that band and a good distance, constantly engaging those inner thighs. Really great though movement. We'll be also incorporating these within different lifting programs for myself as well. To finish off, I did do bird dogs again. Looking back on these, I wish I would have done a regressed form of just the leg movements to really dial in on that posterior pelvic tilt. I do feel more balanced, however, with engaging my cores and engaging my glutes. I should have been a little bit more mindful on that posterior tilt, though. You can see my back kind of curve up, which we really want to avoid. So going forward, I will start with the regressed form of this just to a single leg lift and really being mindful of what my back is doing because we want to brace that core so it helps with the back as well. All right. So for our future directions, I would really recommend continuing with an emphasis in glute activation and being mindful of being balanced in strength component and using them both through exercises and keeping them engaged the entire time. I want to ensure the quality of the hip movement and mobility. I also highly encourage daily stretching of the hamstrings and the entire posterior chain. Like I said earlier, I really struggle with my hamstrings being tight. So trying to do daily stretching would be great. In my entire posterior chain, my gastrocnemius, my soleus, my hamstrings, my glutes, everything. And then a big emphasis on regaining all of my dorsiflexion mobility. My ankle's still very stiff, which I need to continue stretching movements and exercise movements to get that back. I would also really like to see an athletic trainer to hopefully break through some of that built up tissue on the right side of my ankle as well, just because I know there is some scar tissue in there. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.